The massive crystal chandeliers of the Grand Imperial Ballroom hummed with an expensive golden light. My sister Amelia stood at the podium on the stage, bathed in a single brilliant spotlight. She looked every bit the philanthropist saint she pretended to be. Her custom-made silk gown shimmered under the lights. Her smile was flawless, and the city's wealthiest patrons hung on her every word. The applause was deafening as she announced they had just surpassed their $2 million fundraising goal for the new children's hospital wing. She was the toast of the town, the angel of the city's elite. She raised a perfectly manicured hand for silence, her diamond bracelet catching the light. She was about to deliver her closing remarks, her final self-congratulatory monologue. But another voice cut through the air instead. It was our mother's voice, thin, desperate, and amplified by the state-of-the-art speakers to fill every corner of that opulent hall. "Please, Amelia!" The recording of her voicemail crackled, raw and unfiltered. "The doctor says I don't have much time. I'm begging you, just help your brother with the bills. Don't just let me die." A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the continuation of the message. "I know you're busy with your important life," our mother's voice pleaded, each word a testament to her fading strength. "But I'm your mother. Please, don't do this." Then came the final brutal words Amelia had left for me a week prior, the ones she never thought anyone else would hear. Her voice, cold and sharp, replied, "She made her choices. It's not my problem. Let her die." My sister had just spent an hour talking about the sanctity of human life, about community and compassion, all to squeeze donations from the pockets of high society. She was the picture of grace, yet she had signed our mother's death warrant to save a few dollars. I stood near the sound booth at the back of the room, my heart a cold, steady drum in my chest. I watched the color drain from her face, her eyes darting wildly, searching for the source of her public execution. Then, she found me. Our eyes locked across the sea of horrified, gossiping faces, and in that moment, she knew. She knew her perfect world was burning to the ground, and I was the one holding the match. You're probably wondering why. Why would I humiliate my own sister at the crowning moment of her social career? Because she and my parents had spent a lifetime building her glittering pedestal on my back, using my pain and my sacrifices as the stones to build her throne. To understand why I had to play that voicemail, you have to understand the 25 years of cruelty that led to it. Our family operated on a simple, unspoken rule. Amelia's wants were needs, and my needs were inconveniences. From the moment she was born, 2 years after me, she was the brilliant, shining star, and I was the dim, orbital body caught in her gravity. She was the golden child, destined for greatness. I was the responsible one, the old soul, which was just parental code for the child they didn't have to worry about because they didn't pay him much attention. My parents weren't monsters in the traditional sense. They didn't beat me or lock me in a closet. Their cruelty was quieter, a slow and steady erosion of my worth. It was in the way their eyes lit up when Amelia entered a room, and the way they barely glanced up when I did. It all crystallized around a single promise. When I was 10, I won the district science fair. I'd spent months building a miniature volcano that actually erupted with baking soda and vinegar, meticulously documenting every step. I was so proud. My father sat me down that night, his hand on my shoulder. "Son," he said, with a rare look of sincerity, "you're a smart boy. You work hard. Your mother and I have decided we're going to put aside money for you and your sister's college education. You just keep getting good grades, and we'll handle the rest. We'll make sure you both have the best future possible." I clung to that promise like a lifeline. It became my entire motivation. Every A on a report card, every extra credit project was a deposit into that imaginary bank of my future. I saw a path out, a way to become someone my parents might finally see. Meanwhile, Amelia's path was being paved with gold. She needed ballet lessons, so they sold my grandmother's antique locket. She needed a private art tutor, so my summer camp fund disappeared. She needed a trip to Italy for a cultural immersion program, so my father took on extra shifts at the plant. His exhaustion, a constant smoggy presence in our home. Each time, the justification was the same. "It's an investment in Amelia's future, Mark," my mother would say, not quite meeting my eyes. "She has a special talent. We have to nurture it. They never seemed to notice that nurturing her talent always came at my expense. I started working a paper route when I was 13, saving every dollar in a rusty coffee can under my bed. I thought I was contributing, helping the family so that my own college fund would be safe. I was so naive. I didn't understand that in their eyes there was only one future worth investing in, and it wasn't mine. I wasn't helping the family. I was just subsidizing my own obsolescence. The breaking point came the spring I turned 18. I had spent years sacrificing, maintaining a 4.0 GPA and acing my SATs. I wasn't aiming for the Ivy League like Amelia. My dream was the State University's engineering program, which was excellent and, more importantly, affordable. I came home one afternoon, clutching the thick acceptance letter in my hand, my heart pounding with a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in years. I had held up my end of the bargain. I found my parents and Amelia in the living room. "I got in," I announced, waving the letter. "Full acceptance into the mechanical engineering program." My father grunted from behind his newspaper. Amelia glanced up from her phone with an unimpressed sigh. It was my mother who spoke, her voice laced with a strange, forced gentleness. "Mark, honey, that's wonderful. Sit down. We need to talk to you about something." I knew from her tone that this wasn't going to be a celebration. I sat on the edge of the armchair, the acceptance letter suddenly feeling flimsy in my hand. "Amelia also got her acceptance letter today," my mother began, her eyes shining with pride. "She got into NYU, the Tisch School of the Arts." "That's great," I said, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. NYU was notoriously expensive. "It is," my father said, finally putting down his paper. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, the way he always did before delivering bad news. "The thing is, son, her scholarship doesn't cover everything. Not even close. We had to make a tough decision." And then my mother delivered the final blow. "We used the college fund to pay her deposit and first year's tuition," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There's nothing left." The silence in the room was deafening. I stared at them, my mind struggling to process the words. The entire fund? All of it? The money they had promised me? The money I had helped save? I finally turned to my sister, who had been observing the whole scene with a detached smirk. "You knew?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Amelia shrugged, finally putting her phone down. "Of course I knew. What did you expect? For me to turn down my dream school so you could go play with tractors at State U? Someone in this family needs to be successful, Mark. Get over it." Her words were like a physical slap. In that instant, the boy who had tried so hard to please his parents died. The promise wasn't broken. It had been a lie from the very beginning. My future had been a resource they could liquidate for their precious daughter. I wasn't a son. I was a contingency plan. I didn't argue with them. I didn't scream or break things. There was no point. Arguing implies the other party is capable of reason, and they had proven they were not. A profound, chilling clarity settled over me. The house I was sitting in wasn't my home. It was a monument to my sister's ego, built with my stolen future. I stood up, the acceptance letter still in my hand. I walked over to Amelia, who looked up at me with defiant eyes. I dropped the letter in her lap. "Congratulations," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. "You got what you wanted." I went upstairs to my room and packed a single duffel bag. I took my clothes, the few books I owned, and the rusty coffee can from under my bed, which held $874. It was all I had to show for 5 years of work. As I walked down the stairs, my mother stood at the bottom, her face a mask of confusion and hurt. "Mark, where are you going? Don't be so dramatic." "You made your investment," I said calmly, walking past her toward the front door. "Now I have to go figure out mine." My father blocked my way. "You walk out that door, don't you think about coming back?" he boomed, his face red with anger. He wasn't angry because he would miss me. He was angry because I was defying him, taking away his scapegoat. "Don't worry," I said. "I won't." The next morning, I walked into an Air Force recruitment office. If my family wouldn't give me a future, I would build one myself. The recruiter, a stern but fair sergeant, saw my test scores and my high school transcripts and promised me a path to an engineering degree if I committed to becoming an officer. They saw potential where my family saw only an obstacle to their daughter's ambitions. I signed the papers that day. The calls started during basic training. First it was my mother, leaving tearful voicemails accusing me of abandoning the family and breaking her heart. Then came my father's angry messages, calling me selfish and ungrateful. Amelia left only one voicemail. "So, you ran away to play soldier," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "How pathetic. I guess some people are just meant to take orders their whole lives." I listened to each message once, then deleted it. After the third week, I blocked their numbers. For the next 10 years, I disappeared from their lives. I poured everything I had into my career. I wasn't just playing soldier, I was graduating top of my officer training class. I was earning a degree in aerospace engineering, fully paid for by the US Air Force. I was leading teams, managing multi-million-dollar projects, and earning a level of respect my father could only dream of. I was building a life they couldn't touch, a world where my worth wasn't determined by how much I could sacrifice for my sister. After 12 years of distinguished service, I left the Air Force with the rank of captain. The discipline, the engineering degree, and the project management experience I'd gained were highly valuable in the private sector. I took the money I had diligently saved, combined it with a small business loan, and started a company that designed and manufactured specialized logistics drones. The first few years were lean, filled with 70-hour weeks and sleeping on a cot in the office. But I was used to hardship, and this time, I was building something for myself. The company, which started in a rented garage, grew. Today, it's a leader in the industry, with lucrative contracts with both commercial shipping giants and the Department of Defense. I didn't just become successful. I built an empire on the foundations of the future my family tried to deny me. For a decade, I had complete silence from them. Then, one afternoon, my assistant buzzed my office. "There's a woman on the line for you, sir. She says her name is Carol. She says she's your mother." A jolt went through me. I hadn't heard her voice since I was 18. I hesitated, then told my assistant to put her through. The voice on the other end was thinner, more fragile than I remembered. "Mark, is that really you?" "It's me," I said, my tone flat. There were a few seconds of awkward silence, then a rush of words. She was sorry, she missed me, she always prayed for me. I listened without responding. Small talk wasn't the reason she had spent 10 years trying to find me. Finally, she got to the point. "I'm sick, Mark," she said, her voice cracking. "It's my heart. The doctors say I need a special kind of surgery, a new procedure. Our insurance won't cover it all. It's very expensive." I felt a strange, hollow ache in my chest. It wasn't love, but it was something. It was the ghost of a feeling for the mother I once wished I had. I asked the obvious question. "What about Amelia? Can't she help?" A flicker of the old pride entered her voice. "Oh, Amelia is doing so well. She married a very wealthy man, Richard Havenswood. She's a prominent socialite now, Mark. She runs her own charity foundation, raising money for hospitals. She's so important, always busy with galas and events." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. My sister raised money for hospitals, but apparently couldn't be bothered to help her own mother. My mother delivered this information with pure, unadulterated pride, completely oblivious to the hypocrisy. Still, this was my mother, and she was sick. Against my better judgment, a flicker of old responsibility stirred within me. "Send me the hospital's information and the name of the doctor," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "I'll look into it." I was as good as my word. I had my assistant schedule a call with my mother's cardiac surgeon at Johns Hopkins. The doctor was frank. The procedure was cutting edge, a minimally invasive valve replacement that would give her a new lease on life. Without it, she had maybe a year, and it would be a year of decline. The cost, after her meager insurance policy paid its share, was a staggering $150,000. For me, it was a significant but manageable sum. For my mother, it was an impossible mountain. My first instinct was to just write the check and be done with it. But then I stopped. That was the old Mark, the one who quietly shouldered the burdens while Amelia danced through life unencumbered. No. This was a family responsibility, and for the first time, I was in a position to enforce that. I would pay my share, half of it, but Amelia would have to pay hers. Given her husband's wealth and her public image as Lady Bountiful, it seemed like a simple, fair request. I found the number for her foundation online and left a message. She returned my call within the hour, her voice a clipped, suspicious staccato. "Mark, what do you want?" There was no warmth, no curiosity after a decade of silence, just guarded irritation. I laid out the facts calmly and clearly. Mom's diagnosis, the surgery, the cost. It's $150,000, I concluded. I'm wiring $75,000 to the hospital's billing department tomorrow. I need you to match it. A sound that was half laugh, half scoff echoed down the line. You cannot be serious, she said. $75,000? Mark, I am in the middle of planning the single most important charity gala of the year. Do you have any idea what the overhead is on an event like this? The caterers, the orchestra, the venue? My foundation's reputation, my reputation depends on this. I was speechless. She was weighing our mother's life against the cost of canapes and string music. This is her life, Amelia, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Don't be so dramatic, she snapped. She's old. People get sick. It's not my fault she and Dad had terrible financial planning. I have obligations to my donors and my husband's family. I can't just throw money at every family problem that pops up. I told her I was paying my half regardless, and that the choice to pay hers was on her conscience. Then I hung up. An hour later, my phone buzzed again with her name. I was in a meeting with my board and silenced the call. It went to voicemail. I didn't listen to it until that night, alone in my office. I pressed play, and her voice, dripping with venom and finality, filled the silence. It was the message I played at the gala. I thought about what you said, the recording began, and my answer is no. I'm not giving you a dime. She made her choices. It's not my problem. Let her die. Listening to that voicemail, I didn't feel a hot, messy rage. It was a cold, clarifying fury. It was as if the last 30 years of my life had been brought into sharp, perfect focus. Every slight, every sacrifice, every lie. It all led to this moment, to her final callous dismissal of our mother's life. The last shred of familial duty I felt for Amelia turned to ice. She wasn't just a selfish, spoiled woman. She was a monster, a sociopath hiding in a designer gown, and I was the only one who knew the truth. In that moment, the path forward became crystal clear. Second, I saved a copy of Amelia's voicemail to a secure drive. I now had the evidence, her own words, her own voice, pronouncing her own sentence, and I knew with absolute certainty that she was going to pay, not with money. I didn't want her money. I was going to make her pay with something she valued far more, her reputation. Her entire identity was built on the lie of her compassion. I was going to demolish that lie in the most public way imaginable. Her annual Compassion Gala, which she had used as her excuse, was the perfect venue. It was the centerpiece of her fake universe. Information about the event was everywhere. I went to her foundation's website and made a $50,000 donation in my company's name. The large donation earned me a VIP table near the stage and a special mention in the event program. More importantly, it got me a direct line to the event coordinator. I explained that I wanted to present a surprise audio tribute to honor the foundation's amazing work. The idea was met with enthusiasm. On the night of the gala, I met the sound technician, a young man who looked overwhelmed by the scale of the event. I handed him a USB drive and a crisp $500 bill. Cue this up to play right after Mrs. Havenswood finishes her main speech, I instructed. Don't ask any questions. He nodded, pocketing the cash. Which brings us back to that night in the ballroom. I sat at my table, calmly sipping ice water, an island of cold purpose in a sea of champagne and false pleasantries. I watched my sister on that stage, soaking in the applause, her face glowing with triumph. She was the queen of her castle, completely unaware that the executioner was already inside the walls and the entire kingdom was about to watch her fall. For a long moment after the recording ended, there was only a stunned, absolute silence. The $2 million they had raised, the crystal glasses, the entire glittering facade of the evening, it all seemed to vanish, replaced by the raw, ugly truth of my sister's words hanging in the air. Then, the silence shattered. A wave of whispers started at the tables near the front and swept through the ballroom, growing into a shocked, feverish murmur. Cell phones were raised, their screens glowing in the dim light as people began recording. The faces that had been filled with fawning admiration a moment ago were now twisted into masks of disgust, contempt, and morbid curiosity. This was better than gossip. This was a scandal. On stage, Amelia was a statue carved from ice. The perfect, benevolent smile was gone, replaced by a slack-jawed horror. The spotlight that had been her friend now felt like an interrogation lamp, pinning her in place for all to see. She finally lurched toward the microphone, her hand trembling. That was a fabrication, she stammered, her voice thin and high-pitched. A disgusting, cruel prank by a jealous person. But the desperation in her voice sold her guilt more than any confession could. No one was buying it. I saw her husband, Richard Havenswood, a man whose family crest was probably stamped on his soul, shoot to his feet. His face, usually a placid mask of old money indifference, was a thundercloud of pure fury. He wasn't rushing to comfort his wife. He was scrambling to contain a public relations nightmare that had just detonated in the middle of his carefully curated life. He snarled something at the event staff and began shouldering his way through the crowd toward the stage, his eyes fixed on Amelia with a look of murderous rage. My work was done. I didn't need to stay for the messy aftermath. I placed my linen napkin neatly on the table beside my untouched plate, stood up, and began walking toward the grand exit. No one paid me any mind. All eyes were glued to the spectacular implosion of their charity queen. I had lit the fuse, and now I was walking away as the whole thing burned down. As I reached the enormous double doors of the ballroom, I paused and glanced back one last time. Richard had reached the stage. He wasn't whispering reassurances to her. He was grabbing her by the arm, his grip visibly tight, his face contorted in a silent snarl. He yanked her away from the podium, pulling her toward the wings as the flashes from unofficial photographers and guests' phones popped like a string of firecrackers. Her fall from grace wasn't just happening, it was being documented for the world to see. And I knew this was only the beginning of her punishment. I woke up the next morning to the sweet symphony of my sister's life falling apart. By 9 a.m., the hashtag #Gala was the #1 trending topic nationally. The grainy cell phone videos had gone viral, played on a loop on every morning news show and gossip blog. The headlines were brutal. Charity Queen's cruel words exposed. Havenswood Gala ends in scandal as founder's voicemail leaks. Philanthropist to dying mother, let her die. They used the exact quote. It was more damning than anything I could have ever planned. By noon, the consequences were escalating. A formal press release from Richard Havenswood's corporate office announced that he was indefinitely stepping away from his wife's foundation to focus on his family's privacy during this difficult time. It was corporate speak for jumping from a sinking ship. An online gossip column, citing a source close to the family, reported that Richard had moved out of their mansion and into a suite at the Four Seasons before dawn. His humiliation was complete, and he was wasting no time cutting his losses. Amelia hadn't just lost her reputation, she was losing her meal ticket. Then, the inevitable call came. It was my father. I answered and was met not with a greeting, but with a roar of pure, undiluted rage. "What have you done?" he bellowed into the phone. "You ruined her! After everything we did for you, you go and destroy your sister's life. You aired our family's private business for the whole world to see." I let him finish his tirade, listening to the familiar, misplaced anger. He was defending her, even now. He wasn't horrified that his daughter was willing to let his wife die. He was furious that I had exposed it. "I destroyed her?" I finally asked, my voice as cold and sharp as a scalpel. "Or did I just turn on the lights and show everyone the monster you and Mom spent 25 years creating? The golden child you sacrificed everything for? The one who, when her own mother was begging for help, said, and I quote, 'Let her die.'" There was a sputtering silence on the other end of the line. "By the way," I continued, twisting the knife, "Mom's surgery was yesterday morning. It was a complete success. The doctors expect a full recovery. I paid for it, the entire bill. While you were probably worrying about Amelia's party, I was making sure my mother didn't die." I could hear him breathing, but he said nothing. He had no defense. "You have the nerve to call and scream at me for humiliating the daughter you coddled into a sociopath," I said, delivering my final verdict. "This is the last time you and I will ever speak. You chose her a long time ago, so you can live with your choice. I hope she was worth it." I hung up the phone before he could form a reply. Then, I blocked his number and my mother's. The final cord was cut. I was finally, completely free.